we go. I was so focused on making sure I didn't interrupt the sixth stream, and I muted myself, and there we go. Well, welcome in, Raiders.
Hello.
So as I said, we are Rose City Games. I'll let Marlowe actually, I was introducing her, but I will let her introduce herself because that's
Hello.
much better. So Marlowe, take it away because folks just saw a little bit of Floppy Knights.
Yeah. So kind of what you saw is Floppy Knights is a tactics meets deck building game. So the basic premise of it is that you play as this character Phoebe, who's created this invention that can make like battle units out of information that's on floppy disks. And all of the units are like very goofy and wild characters, and she uses them to do like odd jobs and fight battles for her and kind of everything in between that you'd see in a tactics game. I'm the creative director on the project, so I'm responsible for overseeing and working on a little bit of everything with a really big focus on making art and animation and story and just like the overall aesthetics and world of the game.
Yeah, and it's such a cool world. And I'll switch in between. So I got fancy. I was like, I'm going to make two scenes so folks can see gameplay and our faces. Went all out for Seattle Indies.
Ooh la la.
So
Look at that game.
I know, it's so pretty. What inspired you to come up with Floppy Knights? Because this world is so vibrant and so fun. The knights themselves are just really, they have so much personality. What inspired you?
So the basic sort of like, I guess, gameplay inspiration behind Floppy Knights was mine and the team's love for like tactics games like Advance Wars and Fire Emblem. We were exploring the idea of how tactics games and deck building games give you this kind of like resource management, doing math really good, brain feeling. And we were interested in how we could mash those genres together in a meaningful way that kind of like compounds that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So the aesthetics of the game were all based on this idea of like 80s and 90s technology, but in a magical fantasy world. So you see a lot
Yeah.
of like traditional fantasy fare and all that kind of stuff in the visuals, but you also get this like streak of modern fashion and technology and like other kind of trappings in the environment and the character design. And it's kind of like all based around this idea of like, what if technology was considered magic in a fantasy world? And it's just kind of like bright and bubbly in that way.
Yeah, it's so nice to be in worlds that are like that. I think that's something that feels good, especially right about now.
Yeah, yeah.
um, so what's really kind of neat, and we found since you're the creative lead for the game and you're doing the art and you have such distinctive artwork, like a style, is that a lot of folks, when they see Floppy Knights, they mention another game that you may be recalling right now. How has working on Floppy Knights been different than working on Dicey Dungeons?
Yeah, that's a really good question. With both projects, I would say I was really lucky to have a lot of creative freedom, which was great. I think there's main kind of fundamental difference so far has been that Floppy Knights kind of started out as my baby, just coming from like an IP standpoint. We went into the project with this basic premise of the characters and the world that I had developed with the help of the folks at Rose City Games. And with Dicey Dungeons, the whole team was working off of Terry's prototype that already existed when like I was brought into the project and Chipsel was brought into the project to do the music. So we kind of started with this thing that existed and was a really tight game loop and like had dice characters in it already. But there wasn't really anything by way of like visuals, music, or story. So we were kind of like building that as we went and building it off of what was already there. With Floppy Knights, everything is sort of being built from the ground up at the same time. So yeah, it's kind of like two different ways to approach it. So that's been the most different thing for
Yeah.
both of them.
That's so cool. That's neat that you're getting both experiences of both coming into something that's already existing and creating characters around a world that's already built, and then also
Yeah.
being able to create your own world.
Yeah,
And
pretty cool.
and Tolsale says, Marlowe, I love the eels.
Oh, thank you. They're a
S-
really good band. If you haven't listened to them, I've got a
yeah, I was
poster
gonna ask
behind
the
me.
poster in the back. um, so we touched on this a little bit, but how would you describe the mood of Floppy Nights?
Yeah, I think kind of like what I mentioned, it's like really bubbly and it's just lighthearted and goofy in a way. Like I mean, you're sending like potted plants into battle for you that kick things. So, you know, there's a couple levels removed from a super serious tactics game.
Hmm.
But we really wanted it to be like kind of fantastical looking in that way and also in that way like really accessible visually because
Hmm.
I'm a really big fan of the tactics genre, but I also understand that a lot of the times, like, it can look really like intimidating to play.
Hmm.
So we wanted it to look as accessible as possible, and a lot of that comes with the fun visuals, and but it also comes with like UI design and making sure that like all the information is in front of the player and it's not overwhelming.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we also looked like, or I at least looked at a lot of the way Advance Wars handles it, where it's like bright and colorful and fun, but it's just like series about war tactics.
Right.
But it has like such fun characters as design and aesthetics. And I think with Floppy Knights, it's like taking that kind of flavor and like turning it up to 11 and making
Hmm.
it even more goofier and kind of like more outlandish, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think there's something to be said about, because I know I'm the kind of person where I think, I never really jumped into tactics games myself. Like, I think Final Fantasy Tactics, because I was just a Final Fantasy
Yeah.
kid, and
Yes.
Advance Wars, because it looked cute. But other than that, I've stayed away from the genre because it's not as cute as I typically gravitate toward, because I'm
Not
just,
cute enough.
I'm superficial. So. Yeah. Oh, and hey, what? Thank you so much, Roth. Roth said gasp when I switched over the scene. So yeah, it's like really exciting to have more options for people when they're playing games, both like mechanically because we've got so many different genres, but now like
Mhm.
within those genres visually, there's a lot more happening, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw a lot of that just from the games that have been featured on the stream too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's cool to be part of a wave of like different visuals going into this genre. So,
Yeah, it's really fun.
yeah.
So we talked a lot about the visuals, but what about the gameplay? Because a lot of folks, especially earlier in the sixth stream, were like, wait, this is mashing up sort of two different genres. Could you
Yeah.
describe what players will be doing in Floppy Nights and how it works?
Yeah. So, yeah, basically players will be taking on like traditional sort of tactics battles, but there's a bit of a twist on it. Where each turn you're drawing cards from a deck that you can build. You can like customize your deck and all that. And every turn you have a set amount of energy to spend on playing cards. So it's very in line with like Dominion and like other deck building games like that. So these cards are the things that allow you to place units on the map and move them and buff them and like do extra attacks with them and all of that. So you have your standard kind of like move your units towards the enemies to attack, but you get this bit of randomness and strategy thrown in that you have to consider because you have to think about like what the most optimal turn is with the cards that you're dealt. So there's a lot of familiar language there from tactics and deck building, which makes it really easy to pick up for folks. But
Mm-hmm.
together, those two languages kind of mean something totally different. That gives players this new challenge of like, okay, like what is my best turn in front of me, and like what is my best turn when I'm like randomly drawing cards, and it makes me kind of change the way that I play tactics games.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the basic premise.
It's really cool. And I think, I mean, you mentioned accessibility with visuals. And I think what's
Hmm.
really fun is, especially, coming in, like I get the joys of getting to play the builds as the game evolves. And as someone who isn't as proficient in these kind of tactics, like the language of tactics games or the strategies, it's
Hmm.
really neat seeing the way that accessibility and like sort of the vocabulary is really simplified for folks who may not be familiar. But of course, things will increasingly, get more complex as the game continues to develop, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. And there's, I think with a lot of tactics games, there's like multiple ways players can play it too, where it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, if you're just like straightforward and want to move and attack, like you can always in some way make that work, but like the game really encourages you to like build decks that have like different sort of strategies and synergies built into it where it's like, yeah, like I can just move and attack and that's the basic like loop that I can do, but I can
Hmm.
also uh move over here and like attack from a range or buff my unit in this way and do the
Hmm.
special thing or there's a lot of different ways you can approach these games, which is why I think it's fun and also just like a cool way that makes it inherently accessible.
Yeah. So when folks do get the chance to play, what do you hope that they get out of a game like Floppy Knights?
I hope they experience kind of like I do, that familiar feeling that these genres of games provide. And I'm talking about that feeling I mentioned kind of earlier, where you're like looking at the resources in front of you and making tactical decisions that feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the whole draw to these types of games, is that like you get to take the time and like plan out your turn as optimally as you can, and that just feels really good, because it's kind of just like a lot of elements being thrown at you, and you get to sort them out and figure out like what's the path that I get to take that feels the best and is the best path for me to take every turn.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm feeling that whenever I play this game, kind of like you mentioned, Jenny, like playing the builds as they come up, it like gives me those same feelings as like, yeah, playing those old like Game Boy Advance tactics
Yeah.
games I always play. So yeah, obviously there's that, and I also hope that people are charmed by like the world and all the characters of Floppy Knights and everything that comes with it, because
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I think it's just a really fun time, and I think people will be able to have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I agree. We've got one question from Rose Minotti. Is
Sure.
there anything you can share about what progression will look like?
What progression will look like? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we have sort of what has been shown in the footage you've seen so far, is that we have like a deck that you start out with, and it has a certain number of units, and it has like a special deck card that's like grow, because the deck is plant themed, and you get to like grow every unit and every card in your deck and all of that. But as you progress, you get different decks and different cards unlocked. So we'll have like 4 different decks in the game that all have different themes, both visually but also mechanically. So like the plants deck is all about like healing and growing, and there's other decks that will come up later that are about movement and like moving around the map better, or changing the map,
Mm-hmm.
or like, doing status effects on enemies rather than just straight attacking them. So there's a lot of progression that comes with that, and then the complexity of like, where do you mix those decks together to create like a deck that you like to play with,
Mm-hmm.
along with obviously things like enemies are getting harder, and there's different like terrain types that you have to navigate, and sometimes it's not just about defeating every enemy, but it's about getting to a certain point on the map before the enemy does. So
Mm-hmm.
like mixing up the way that you play between levels, and just making cards and all of that stuff more complex, so you can kind of customize your experience and have a lot of fun with it.
That's awesome. Yeah. And Rose, hopefully that answered your question really
Yeah.
well. And let's see. Yeah, Good Enough says turn-based games always feel more accessible since you can take them at your own pace. That is so true.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been more and more excited as we're able to play the builds, and I'm very excited for eventually, hopefully, when people get to see more of the game. I think they'll really like what they see. Are there any other, also, if folks have any questions, feel free to ask them. We are here for you and to answer anything you may be wondering about Floppy Knights or Rose City Games or anything like that. I don't know how much else we can answer. Mysteries of life. But
Yes.
also, Marlowe, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you think you would like to share about the game?
I don't think so. I think I'm just mostly really excited for people to get their hands on it when they get their hands on it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's been a really fun project to work on, and it's been really cool, like I said, that it's sort of been like uh my baby since the beginning. So
Yeah.
being able to share it with people and stuff like this and show people what's up is really, really fun. So I hope you all enjoy it.
Oh, okay. We got 2 questions. First is big bad boss battles? Question mark? Are they?
Big bad boss battles are planned. I think I was actually talking to our designer recently about just like plans for boss battles and stuff, and I was very explicitly like big. Like I want them to be physically big. So
Take up the
do with
whole
that what you
screen.
will. Yeah.
Perfect. I think that's a
But I mean,
good
that's always
answer.
like the fun stuff with because a lot of these games come out of like an older like retro like era, where I mean, when I say retro, it's kind of like Game Boy Advance at this point, but
Hmm.
like It was always so cool when you played those games. And it's like, wow, this enemy is like 4 tiles big instead of 1. Like,
That's how you
huge.
know.
Yeah.
And who is your favorite knight?
Oh man, that's tough. I think it
Hmm.
changes like all the time because I'm always like, I mean, not forever and ever, but like I've been animating them like throughout the process of working on the game and working on other stuff. So I feel like it's almost always the last one I animated. Um, but I think I really like, I just finished this one this week on stream, or was it last week on stream, where he's like his head is a big cauldron and it's
Hmm.
just like got bubbly like cauldron juice coming out of him and he throws like potions at people.
So
I
cool.
That's my favorite right now, but there's a lot. There's actually going to be a lot of unique units and animations in this game, which is cool. So there'll be enough for me to fall in love with every different day.
Yeah, it's amazing because for those of you who aren't familiar, on our this Twitch channel, we stream every Wednesday Marlowe's art and animation. So if you want to tune in and see the knights being developed and see them animated, it's really, really cool. Good music is always played, so it's really nice to have in the background while working. And yeah, every week I think I come away from it saying like, this is my new favorite knight.
Yeah,
It's really tough.
I'm so
Um,
fickle.
they're all too cute. You have to stop being so good. Toll asks, I like being able to stop and focus on what the perfect move will be. How much RNG is there in the game?
So there is, it's sort of like controlled RNG in this way, where you are drawing like 5 cards from a deck of, I think, up to like 30 every turn, but you do get to edit those cards in your
Hmm.
deck to sort of like push RNG one way for you or another. So if you're playing and you're like, wow, I really need more move cards, you can actually take the action to do that and like retry the level and it'll feel less random. So there is randomness in it, but also at the same time, it's like you can control it. And we're designing it in such a way that like a lot of the cards work together really well. So you'll like, grab a random assortment of 5, but you can like do a lot of different things with those 5 cards.
Hmm.
And there's never like a turn where you can't do something, which is good.
Cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's always nice. That's the one weakness I found in certain tactical games where you get to those points where you feel a little stuck.
Yeah.
Um, Snacks asks, is Carlton the only AI Phoebe built to help her?
Yes, Carlton is the only AI Phoebe built to help her, but not the only AI in the game. So there will be other characters
Oh.
kind of like Carlton.
And the Yeti asks, I feel like the art and the writing work so well from what I've seen. Was there a close collaboration when those were being developed, or was it reactionary? Kind of a chicken and egg question.
It was a close relationship, kind of like what I mentioned before. Like everything has been sort of being built at the same time. So we have like all the characters and sort of like their personalities and the dialogue all like being built up in parallel with each other. I actually did a lot of the writing with the help of Corey, our producer. That was sort of a tag team effort. So yeah, it's all kind of like this holistic thing that's happening at the same time that
Hmm.
a lot of it is like stuff that I'm working on and overseeing.
Yeah. And also, thank you everyone for the follows. I had to turn off notifications because I didn't want the bling to like overshadow Marlowe speaking, but we see them and appreciate them. Also, hello, Poofy Cat. um, sounds and Poofy asks, sounds like there is initial RNG, but not RNG in the card effects? Question.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, it's possible we might have that stuff in the future, but right
Hmm.
now the cards like do exactly what they say. There's nothing that's like do damage between 1 and 3 HP.
Hmm.
It's just very straightforward in that way. Like we didn't want to like go down a rabbit hole of exponential RNG where
Right.
it's like you really don't have any idea what's going to happen every turn because you have to have enough of an idea that you feel like you can plan.
Right.
Which is why playing those games feels good. So.
Yeah. And RJ says that he is crossing his fingers for Evil Carlton. So we won't speak to that, but if you want to create your own version of an Evil Carlton, we would love to see it. All right. So one thing I also wanted to mention that we haven't, and it's a little bit hard because I haven't set up the music to be played, but I'd love to touch into what folks can expect from the music because that's something we haven't really talked about very much. And I think what Graham, our composer, has been able to create and what you have provided feedback on and the team has provided feedback on is really exciting. So could you touch a little bit on the music that we're going to be hearing in the game?
Yeah, I feel like I'm not the best person at describing music, but I can tell you that because whenever we're doing like feedback, I'm like, I like this sparkly bit. Does that make sense? But yeah, the music is like phenomenal. Graham, our composer, is the same composer from Garden Story, if you're familiar with that project. But yeah, they've just been knocking it out of the park with everything. I think that we've got this kind of like really fun, calls on kind of like retro game music mood, but is very current. It's just like upbeat and fun and actiony and makes like taking your time and planning a move out still feel really exciting. And yeah, I think that a lot of the music is just like, I would describe it as a bop, and we're kind of like referencing like, you know, like Mac sound palettes and like all that old kind of 90s and 80s retro tech that's in the game and like what kind of sounds come along with that and stuff. So the music actually feels like kind of nostalgic in that way, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Y'all heard it here. It's a bop.
It's a bop. Yeah, I get so excited whenever he gives us new tracks to listen to.
Yeah, it's very true. I'm really excited for folks to be able to hear the tracks that we've been able to listen to. So I think that pretty much closes it out for today. Lots of bops, but how many jams? Oh, bops and jams.
Yeah,
what is it?
Everyone is equal parts a bop and jam.
I'm like trying to think of the lingo that even happens now, and I have no idea.
It's a bam.
Oh, it's a bam.
Yeah.
We just invented it. Let's make it happen. Fetch couldn't happen, but bam will.
But bam will, yes.
So where can folks find Floppy Knights? Where can they find you? Just if they're excited and interested about the game.
Yeah, so Floppy Knights, we're on Twitter at Floppy Knights. But I'm also on Twitter at Marlowe Dobbe, which is just my name, which you see on screen. We've got an Instagram for Floppy Knights as well, which I'm realizing now is also on the bottom of the screen.
That's true.
And we have a Discord too. So yeah, you can follow us in any of those places. I know our Rose City Twitter account and my Twitter post like any relevant updates about the game and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you want to follow along, please do.
Yeah. And if you're interested in Rose City stuff, again, you can also find us at Rose City Games on Twitter. We also have a Discord. We're just really excited to bring you more Floppy Knights content. And yeah, I think that is it for today. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks Marlowe for also taking the time out of a busy day to talk about the game a little bit. Thanks to everyone who followed, and we hope to see you in an art stream. Again, that happens every Wednesday from 3 to 5 p.m. Pacific. And Marlowe's in chat, I'm in chat. We hang out and just chat while doing art.
We just chat.
Yeah, we just chat. Marlowe does the art, I chat. So we'll leave it at that. Yeah, and thank you to everyone for stopping by. Thank you to the Seattle Indies. I said it at the beginning, but I think I was muted, so I'll say it again. Thank you for hosting this Strategy Games Direct and celebrating indies in the Pacific Northwest. It's really exciting.
Yep.
Cool. So we'll see y'all later. Hope y'all have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, y'all.